Hi friends, Itheria here, and it's that time again. With the recent drop of patch 6.4, there have also been a lot of quality of life features added to the game, and I'd like to go over some of them today. I'm not going to be sharing every single one because that would make this a really long video. Instead, I'm going to pick out the ones that I think are the most impactful or stood out the most to me. So let's just get started. First of all, Island Sanctuary. They have added a warning that displays when a material deficit will be incurred for handicrafts, and this will show up when building a structure, crafting an item, or shipping a handicraft, if that would cause a material deficit. And you will see this as a little yellow triangle, kind of like the caution symbol. And it's definitely a nice feature because you will know right away if you're going to have a deficit or not. You don't have to search for it yourself. You will be notified. Next, moving into quality of life updates for battle. This is kind of going to be a bigger section of this video because there's quite a few, but here we go. First of all, glamours can now be applied to the Scholar Fairy. A lot of people were really excited about this. You can now make your fairy look like Carbuncle, and for those of you who are worried about Celine being removed from the game, you can also glam your Eos to look like Celine. So Eos will be able to look like Celine or any of the carbuncles. I tried making her look like Garuda Eggy or Titan Eggy or whatever, but it didn't work, so I don't think, unless I did it wrong, I don't think that's a thing, but you will now be able to confuse people as to whether you are a scholar or a summoner, because now carbuncles aren't just for summoners. And another note to this. Before you can glam the fairy, you have to complete the job quest Forgotten But Not Gone, and then after that there's another quest which isn't mentioned in the patch notes, but it is also in Limsa at the Arcanist Guild from Thubirgeim. I don't even expect me to say that right. And it is called A Fairy Tale Come True. So you have to do that before you can glamour the Scholar Fairy into whatever you want. And since we are talking about the fairy, the next battle quality of life has to do with pets. Pets that are moving will now stop immediately to execute actions when commanded. This should mean that there is less lag when you tell your pet to execute either maybe an AoE heal, or I know a summoner has the raid-wide buff, so that should happen more immediately. However, do be aware, especially if you are playing Scholar, you want to know where your fairy is, okay? Because if you're running through a dungeon and your fairy is lagging behind and it immediately executes that heal, it might not hit everyone if it's not close enough. However, that leads me to my next quality of life update. This one is huge. Basically every job in the game has gotten an increase in range for any of their AoE buffs and skills. So Asylum, the healer bubble got bigger, Caracol got bigger, everything just increased range. It's crazy, I can't even list them all because there's so many, but just know this is really, really huge quality of life. As a healer, who I usually play White Mage, people don't stand in the bubble. People don't stand in the bubble, so having it be bigger, and I've already experienced this playing some of the new raids and stuff, people are in the bubble because it's so much bigger. You wouldn't think that the increase of 5 yoms is that much, but it is. It is. Next, they have added a few more player markers to the game, specifically 6, 7, and 8. So if for some reason you wanted a marker on every single player in your raid that was numbered, you could do that. And here is another really, really big one. I think this is going to be incredibly impactful. When joining a recruiting party, the following categories will now be displayed in the chat log: objective, comment, duty finder settings. So whether you are trying to join a raid or an extreme trial, you will be able to see after you've joined the party what they have said. So if you're dumb like me and you read it but then immediately forget what the strats were when you go into the party, you don't need to try and find the party finder again, because literally I will enter and then it's immediately filled and I'm like, crap, I already forgot the strats. You'll be able to just read it in the chat log. It will be there. So this should hopefully get rid of any confusion and people asking again, hey, what strats again? You should be able to just read it. That's going to be so nice. Alright, moving on to Savage rewards specifically, there have been some changes, and I think they're for the most part good changes. First of all, there's only going to be one chest instead of two. However, this is not affecting the amount of rewards that you will get, and similarly, it's not affecting how the whole system works. So for instance, if you have one person that has already cleared the Savage raid, then the rewards are lesser. That's not changing. All that's changing is that they're just going to have one coffer to open instead of two. Another big thing with this is that these coffers are no longer going to yield duplicates of gear, so you're not going to get 2 boots anymore. And finally with this, body gear can now be obtained from the 3rd area. So in this case, in P11S, you will be able to get a chest piece. Another big change to the Savage rewards is the exchange rate. So every time you clear a Savage dungeon, you get a token. Usually it looks like a little book. Previously, the number of tokens required for chest and leg gear was 8, but now it is 6. Similarly, it used to be 4 for accessories, but now it is 3. And along with this, the books or tokens that you get from the last fight can be exchanged for any of the previous fights within the same tiers. So for Anabasos, if you get one from P12S, you'll be able to exchange those books for P9, 10, or 11. And I'm guessing this change will apply to all of the previous raid tiers as well, though I'm not 100% sure, but it's definitely nice moving forward. Alright, now we're gonna get into PvP. I've just got a couple quick ones here. The first one is that the limp status will no longer be applied to players who are attacked while riding a mount. If a player is attacked while mounted, they will now forcibly dismount and gain the hoofing it status for 5 seconds. If you've done any PvP and been caught on your mount, it's really easy to get trapped, hard to get off, hard to get away. It's like a handicap sometimes if you get caught on your mount. So I think this is going to be a really nice change. The second big one that people have been talking about, score info has been added as a HUD element. So people are hoping that with this, it'll be very clear to see who is winning so that the losing teams can like band together, but I don't know, I don't have high hopes for that, just saying. Next, moving into quality of life updates for Glamour. This one it's not, maybe not quite quality of life, but I still felt like I had to address it. The Valentione's Emissary items, they used to be locked by gender, but now they are not gender locked anymore. That was very quick, and it's kind of weird because when those first came out, people were really mad that they were gender locked, especially because of the story, if you guys remember. And the weird thing was we saw people had like data mined it and they were like, what do you mean it's gender locked? You can see it on both races, it works. So it had like already worked, and for some reason they decided to unlock it now instead of immediately. It's weird, but I guess we can use those now regardless of what gender we're on. The bigger one for Glamour is actually having to do with casting glamours in an in-room. So now, items stored in the Glamour dresser and armoire can now be selected from the drop-down menu when performing Cast Glamour at an in-room. In addition, equipment held by retainers will also now be displayed in the Cast Glamour menu. However, as before, the retainer must be summoned in order to cast glamours using equipment in their possession. So the difference here is that you don't have to actually walk up to your glamour dresser and open it to glam, you just have to be in the in-room. And the really cool thing about this is that you're going to be able to glam from your armoire. I always had this issue where if I wanted to just glam over a piece instead of putting it on a plate, I would just go into my glamour dresser, right click it, and then glam over, right? But you couldn't do that with stuff in the armoire. And now you'll be able to easily glam stuff from the armoire without having to put it on a plate. So I think that's just going to be a really nice change, to be honest. And I can't believe I almost forgot to put this in the video, but we can now use fashion accessories in battle, but only in the overworld. So you're not going to be able to do this in dungeons or instances, but you will be able to enjoy this in fates, hunts, or just hitting the training dummy outside your house. Okay, and our final section is system/miscellaneous. Look how long this video is already. Like, imagine if I had added every tiny little quality of life thing. So this section 2 is maybe a bit hefty compared to the other ones, but let's get into it. Additional icons have been added for user macros. If you are someone that likes to have a separate icon for every macro to help you keep them apart, that's kind of hard to do, but they have added more icons, so that should make it a little bit easier for you. This is another biggie. When changing to a newly acquired job, players can now choose whether or not to transfer hotbar/cross hotbar settings from their associated class. So if you go from, say, a conjurer to a white mage, you won't have to redo your entire higher hotbar, you'll be able to transfer the hotbar, because before, that's what would happen. You would become your higher ranking class, you would graduate from Conjurer to White Mage, and then suddenly your bar is empty. And that's not going to be a thing anymore. You can actually transfer this. Unfortunately, if you're a Scholar, this doesn't apply to you because the actions differ greatly from Arcanist. So Scholar is the only one that's going to have to redo their entire bar. But everyone else, you're good to go. There have also been some pretty cool adjustments made to display names, which is that you can now enable the display of job or class icons in PvE areas. Along with this, you can choose a specific color of that person's name according to their role. So if you want your healers to turn up as green, your DPS as red, and your tanks as blue, you can do that so that the names above their heads all appear in those colors and have their job icons next to it. And they are applying these same changes to the party and alliance chat. So same thing, you can have display icons for classes, jobs, or roles show up in the chat, and you can pick a specific color for each role to show up in the chat. So it's basically the same thing as the overhead names, except showing up in the chat as well. And the final quality of life update I have to share with you is this. An option to store newly obtained items in the last open inventory slot has been added. Items will be placed starting from the bottom right of the last page in your inventory. So this will make it really easy to see what new items you have gained, because they will all start from the bottom right of your inventory instead of showing up somewhere random in your inventory. It'll be a lot easier to find things and you won't have to search so hard for them. So that is it, everyone. Those are the quality of life updates I have to share. This is already kind of a long video, longer than I expected it to be, but there was really a lot of quality of life in this patch. A lot of really good stuff too that I'm excited to see. So let me know in the comments, which of these quality of life updates are you the most excited about? I think for me, I'm really into the chat log thing, where when you go into Party Finder, it'll show the comments so you know what the strats are if you forget to look or forget in general. And then also I think it's really cool being able to use the job icons and change the color of roles in both the chat and above players' heads. I think that's gonna be really nice. As always, please leave a sacrifice for Lord Algorithm in the form of a like, comment, share, or subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Bye! I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt